Hey everybody, it's Suzanne and Kim back with another Energy Unleashed podcast. How you doing, Kim?
I'm really great today, actually. I didn't sound very enthusiastic.
Huh?
I'm
That's
wonderful.
you're
Fantastic.
are you enthusiastic today?
Enthusiastic, yes.
So for those of you that might not be familiar with us two little crazies at this moment, we are oftentimes I take my energy sessions from my clients and share with you some of their experiences so we can learn together. And I was not going to tell Kim a whole lot about this one because I want her unleashed reaction to this because it's funny. I have been having actually a pretty consistency around this subject matter, two within the last week, one within the week prior. And I'm like, this is such an interesting thing. Because when I get I think the same common denominator, when I see it in my clients, it usually means something. And
It
so
does.
that's why I wanted to bring this one forward. So as everything that Kim and I do, take what resonates, toss what doesn't. We're not here to change your mind about anything, but this is an interesting concept. I've had a couple of clients in the last bit say that they feel like they were either cursed from a past life, or they have an implant in them, or they have a dark entity that is following them. So they are absolutely convinced that they're having these kind of like, one of them was a dark matter, a dark being, and it felt like it was always pressing on her, that it wanted to get into her. And another one was, I feel like there's an implant in me, so therefore I can't move forward. The implant one I've had several times lately, actually, which I think is interesting, by the way, Kim, because I'm wondering if people are more aware of the concept of implants lately, because that's like, even 10 years ago, people weren't going, hey, Suzanne, I think I have an implant. I mean, I think that's interesting.
I don't think I knew what that meant 10 years ago. So I don't
Right?
know. There must be a lot more on the like social media and YouTube and whatever.
I would assume so,
Okay.
because I don't know, I don't necessarily ever tell a client, oh, hey, you have an implant, because that's a big deal. I mean, I would if it was really obviously serious to the situation in the conversation, but
Well, why don't
so
you explain what an implant is while you're on that spot? Because
yeah, because I think people are confused about it, including these clients, and this is why I want to bring this one forward. There's all kinds of implants, first of all. There's an implant means that there's something in, and it can be in my physical body. I can literally have an implant in my physical body. Where that comes from, most often, is the negative agenda. What does that mean? Does that mean I'm snatched onto a spaceship and they stick something in me? Does that mean I'm, snatched by the government in the middle of the night and they did something and then wiped it? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. And I'm not going to sit here and profess to know how people actually get physical implants. But if you start to really investigate, learn, study massive UFO abduction stories, lots and lots of people will talk about their implants from off-planet and or on-planet nefarious agendas. And so is that a thing? I totally believe that's a thing. And I know my own body. I have had many implants, but mine are not those kinds of implants. What mine are and have been are what we would call an etheric implant.
okay.
So what an etheric implant means is it is implanted in the auric field of the body. So it is like, let's say that I've got my aura bubble around my body. That's where it's implanted, but it's implanted in the blueprint. So if they implant in the blueprint something in my shoulder, Suzanne's shoulder will carry the implant as a physical being, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's a piece of metal in me. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So it's an etheric implant. So we can implant in a number of ways in terms of the auric field. Also, we can do a physical field, an emotional field, a mental field, a spiritual field, or all of the field. We can do many, many things. And I think we don't even have a clue of what this implant world is about, because we are, I don't want to make this getting too sci-fi weird sounding, but we're tracked for everything. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, in our humanness, I've got my cell phone sitting
It's sitting
here.
right here. Yeah.
Right. And of
Yeah.
course, if we say something, I'm going to have an ad on Facebook in freaking 2 minutes. I mean, come on, people. Seriously, be a little bit more, I'll talk about this with even, by the way, some of my family members, and they're all like, here she goes again. But I mean, this isn't anything that's new. We're being tracked, we're being monitored, we're being studied, we're being used as pawns and all kinds of information every day. This is my favorite one. Oh, oh, grandma, look, I can make you be an elephant. Here, do this on your phone, and you're like, oh, that's funny, I'm an elephant. Well, okay, your whole face just got mapped, right?
They
I mean,
did. They totally just went, whoop, there you
we do
are.
it
I
all
got
the time.
everything.
And we think it's funny, and we're getting mapped when we walk in Walmart. I mean, come on, right? So this isn't like something that we are really needing to fear and be freaked out about either. I don't want anybody sitting down some rabbit hole going, oh my God, Suzanne and Kim talked about all the creepy, scary stuff, because this crap has been going on for eons, right?
Yeah,
And our
like,
technologies have changed and maybe gotten more what we would think heightened and better. But I think we had massive technology for a lot of this stuff forever. We just don't know about it. And so do we need to sit there and fear it? No. And, we've got crazy stuff, the 23andMe or whatever, and all the things we spit in a vial for, where do you think your spit's going? So this isn't new. And I don't think we have to worry about like, oh, they're sticking things in my body, because they can implant an etheric implant with a sound frequency, right? I mean, these are ridiculously advanced things that we know nothing about. My point is this: when I have a client that is doing this kind of a fear-based limitation on their life, it limits you. So the goal of putting this one out is to say, please understand, you are in command of your body. Even if you have something in your body that is not of you, choose to either give that attention or not. Choose to give that attention in fear or in love. Choose to do the work to override it, change your frequency, ask your higher guidance to say, this no longer serves me. Take command back from whatever that fear is, okay? Because this is important, because a lot of people will think, oh, my family all has implants, therefore he or she has problems and now I can't deal with them. What this does is causes separation, and it causes judgment, okay? And we're getting to a place that this is important to let go of all of that stuff.
there's enough division and separation happening without thinking you have an implant or somebody else has an implant. You know
Right.
what I mean? In society right now. But going back to this, if it's fear-based, just like anything else, whether it's trauma or memory, whatever, if it's fear-based, you hold on to it and you're giving it attention instead of letting it go and moving forward
Right.
in a loving way. So
Right.
that's very similar. So
Yes.
do an example of,
I'm going to give you the full example. So when I told the
Okay.
client this, you are the one that put your implant in. And the client was like, what? And I'm like, you actually put the implant in, as did I, by the way, and several of my implants before I incarnated in this body. And they're looking at me like, what the heck are you? Now we are in the sci-fi movie. Like, what are you talking about? Right.
Yeah.
So let's do it this way. If we, especially our starseed that's coming down here to work with the ascension energies, etc., there's information that is stored in my DNA or in my knowing or my higher knowing or my soul, whatever way you want to, articulate all of that. I do not need to be privy to that or have access to that until a certain point in time in this incarnation. So oftentimes somebody like me will implant in between lives in my own auric field or in my own body, and I will implant until it is time to activate that part of my mission work. And when that happens, then I deactivate the implant. And I've done this a couple of times in my own self. I know I have implants in my head. I know I have them in my calves. I know that I have implants in my left-hand side of my gut. I've had them for a long time. And I've had that validated by other psychic people that are like, whoa, what's that? When they, get near that part of your body. So not that I needed validation, but most of my implants I put in myself, because the ability for me to connect to not only my own inner knowledge, but added even more importantly, my own frequency and ability to hold the frequency and connect to the frequency that the entire hologram is at, is all needs to line up before I try to do any of that work. So what it does is it puts a little backstop on the work until all of the frequencies are in sync, if we want to say it that way, and then that implant is released.
Oh, wow. Like, okay, so
this is why I didn't tell you a whole lot about this one, because everybody listening is going to do the same face you just did.
it's true, because like what kind of, you say frequency, but like if you were talking about a mission, like what was it associated to actually being able to do a certain type of work in the matrix, or hologram? Okay, because
So this
I
is
think
me,
that's,
because I'm a little different because I am a starseed that comes down here and does multi-grid work. So
yeah.
for example, if this was such a big pull from a multiverse, my human Suzanne needed to have X amounts of years being a human with experiences in creational reality, letting go of belief systems, grounding my body differently, being able to handle the earth energy differently. I needed to have my facility, which is my
Right.
divine vehicle or my body, right? To be able to hold all of that, to be able to go that far out and do that work, or it wouldn't happen and I'd be sick or not gone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because they all had to sync up. And in the biggest scope, that energy in the multiverses need to be at a frequency, as did our planet. So it just keeps going. The pattern keeps going and going and going. So
Okay.
all of these resonances have to get to the place where they can all work and gel together. What the implant does for somebody like me is I'm not even aware of that work or capable of that work, but I'm aware of the implant, but I don't have to worry about it because I know that it just holds me back until whatever is ready. And then boom, I click.
Okay. But so back to your client or your,
Yeah.
if they, give the example of what they did, how
This
they,
client is actually also very starseed. Okay.
okay.
So I'm not saying just starseeds have implants, and I'm not saying all starseeds have implants. It's
Right.
not that. Okay. It's just that these particular clients, one being a starseed and one not, was feeling this implantedness. And when we don't have information, that's why I think podcasts are so awesome these days. When we don't have information, we get scared and we make it a really big sci-fi movie deal. Like, oh my God, they stuck in something, you know? And so these are the times that we want to probably get to a more neutral place and go, okay, well, what does that implant mean? What does that feel like? What does it entail? What could it mean? What, you know, and do some work instead of thinking, oh crap, I've got an implant and it's nefarious.
Yeah. It's all evil and bad. And
Because 9 times out of 10, when I'm finding entities, and we'll get into that next client in a second, when I'm finding entities, darkness, things following them, things pressing them down in their bed, things that are in their body, implants that are controlling me, 9 times out of 10, it is the self doing it to the self. Okay. But now I want to take this client just a step further. And it is interesting because this is what happened to me also. When you are at this space of telepathic work, mostly like I do everything in my head, and most starseeds are much more susceptible to telepathy and ether work. This is when the next implant, which is nefarious, this is why I want to bring it up, the voice of God comes in. So this is when oftentimes we'll have that voice of, you're not worth anything. Your mother hates you. You might as well just get rid of yourself. No one loves you. You're worthless. You'll never be anything. All of those weird mantras that come into your head that don't feel like they even belong there. So then they think they're haunted by something, or the implant is nefarious and is trying to get them to, kill themselves or commit suicide or whatever, which is really a very serious thing for a lot of people right now. This is why a lot of people are cracking, because this AI stuff is real. This is real. This is a real thing. The voice of God technology is an algorithm that will find something inside of you that is not stable and or not unactivated or activated when it shouldn't be, or whatever. There's a million reasons that it will find it inside of you. Much like if we're talking about Nike and all of a sudden I have a Nike ad, it's an algorithm, right? So it finds the algorithm out there in the ethers, and it will go into that field and just kind of haunt the person until they either figure it out, get healed, delete it, go nuts, whatever. It is happening rampant right now because it's an algorithm. And everything we work with right now is technology algorithms, right?
right. But back to that client, you said they put it in there.
They put in the implant, right,
Yep.
to activate themselves on a starseed level of things. But because they thought it was scary and nefarious, it changes their frequency of holding that implant, which opens them now up to finding that things are going to come and haunt me and scare me. Boom, AI's in.
Now the AI's in and the algorithm begins.
Get it?
Okay.
Crazy.
That makes more sense.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So now with this client, what they have to figure out how to just not be afraid of it, allow it to be there. But what about the algorithm?
Exactly. So 2 things. The same thing happened to me when I was down And when I was not aware and I was not keeping my bubble up, being aware that this is my own frequency, blah, 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 that voice of God stuff started with me really bad for a while. And it often tries. And I'm just really aware of it. And I'm like, absolutely not. And I fly out of my bed or I stand up or wherever I am and I'm screaming, I do not consent, get out of my mind, get out of my field. And that has to go because it's non-organic, right? But you have to have that command in love and command in love for self. That's when it needs to leave. But when we are scared of this so-called implant, thinking that something nefarious got me in the first place, that's what threw her field off. So number one, understand what your implant is. And if you don't, go find out what it is, work with somebody. Number two, be able to reboot your system, keep grounded, and make sure that you are in command of your space, right? And number three, monitor it all the time because it's everywhere. It's everywhere, right? I mean, AI is everywhere. So this is very common. Even if I'm implanted with something else, I believe, my personal belief is that you can change your frequency and override your implant. So this is another thing. If you really seriously don't understand, do I have the implant? Did someone give it to me? Regardless, raise your frequency. Start working with more crystals, clean up your belief systems, clean up your body, clean up your life, clean up your surroundings so that you're maintaining a higher frequency than that is at inside of your current frequency. So it's overriding it.
Okay. So are you able to remove those for people or with that?
Basically, yeah. I mean, I've done removal of implants on myself and others a lot. In fact, what we did is, and sometimes I just transmute them. Sometimes I just put them forward with all light and it just kind of goes into the ethers.
Oh, weird.
And we can do that for ourselves too. Just, you're asking for assistance. And if you feel you want to do it with yourselves and your guidance, lock down your room and tell your guides, and it's funny because this particular person, and I've had two of these this week too, are very starseed. And they're like, I always think that the galactics know what they're doing. And I'm like, not always, because I've had a lot of situations where I'm like, can you just fix this? And they're like, yeah, we don't know how. So a lot of times we humans are in charge of ourselves down here for that purpose, because a galactic is not a human, and and that's why some of us are in human form to go, hey, this shit doesn't work real well, right?
It's part of the earthly experience, then, is what you're saying, huh?
Yeah. So jumping to the other two clients, I've had two of these as well, in terms of dark entity energy or something's around me and it has been with me. And a lot of people, and I have a lot of these, this isn't common to these two clients, this has been with me most of my life. It was with me when I was a child, so I just took it away. I don't want to, wake up my senses because I don't want that thing to find me. Almost every time, and this is hard, almost every time, I find that it is them. It is not, it is not an entity that's trying to get them. It's a fractalized piece of them that has been removed through either trauma, a tragedy, shutdown, whatever. And it almost resides outside of them. So if this is me inside of my auric field, this fractal is way over here, outside of themselves. And because it's a disconnect, it feels heavier and denser. And yet it's trying to get back in. Okay.
Are you again a fractal of the soul? Is that like, when you say
it can be a fractal of the soul, it can be a fractal of my emotion, it can be a fractal of the tragedy, it can be a fractal of anything.
Okay. All right. So it's trying to come back in.
It's trying to come back in to merge. But again, humans are programmed and trained to think that everything that's dark is scary and everything that's dark and scary is going to kill me, right? So we don't want that thing. So now we become control freaks and scared, which only feeds it more because it wants to synergize in love. And you see that? Isn't it crazy?
Yeah, it is. The whole idea that a little fractals out there of, because I just thought when you said fractal soul, but of a trauma of, all kinds of different things, I didn't realize those can fractal and be out there.
Oh God, that's called soul retrieval. And I do that often. In fact, every client at the end of my work as a healing session, I pull in as much fractalization as I possibly can. At the end, that's when I breathe and ground and I ask everything to come back in, because we have to remember we have shards everywhere. We're just like little teeny shards. And think of how small a shard can be. If I break a mirror and I have a chunk like this, but that little teeny hairline shard that's laying next to it, that's part of the mirror, right?
Yep.
And those are the kinds of shards that we can lose, like, oh, I had a terrible, tragic breakup, or, oh my God, I was so sick in the hospital and a little piece stayed in there because it kind of got jumped, or whatever. There's a million ways we can shard and fractal. But when they're big enough, they become an entity feeling. Now I'm going to take this one even further and unleash it even a little bit deeper, in that sometimes when we have trauma as a child, I need to have a helper because no one is hearing me. And so I have my being, which I create with my thought and my mind, which is my friend or my being. And this is my friend. And this is who gives me worth and who gives me value. And it is who I can trust because I'm so inside of myself, because my outside world is so terrifying. So I can go in here and that can be my friend. But as I grow and I come into my own power and my own humanness, oftentimes that will get misplaced because I grow through that. I go into my now at the age where everybody's like, shut up, that's not real. You know, what are you talking about? You have a friend, you know, all that silly stuff where we now are self-deprecating. And I'm like, oh, I am a weirdo. I don't want to show that. That fractalization actually is even bigger than anything else we've been talking about, in terms of it takes on almost its own consciousness. It takes on its own personality because we've been feeding it as a relationship of ourselves. But it becomes its own almost feeling, thought pattern. It's almost like an organic form of AI, right? As I grow and I age and I leave that alone, sometimes when I'm older, it can come back. But now it comes back and it feels foreign and it feels mean. So I feed the foreign and mean my fear, which then it says, oh, is that my fuel? And then I do become foreign and mean. And I start bad talking myself to get me back to the place where the original conversation supported, now it unsupports.
Okay. And in a weird way, that all really made sense to me.
It's messed up.
If it made sense to everybody else, but.
And if it didn't, hit pause and rewind, because it's a lot.
It's a lot. And I just was thinking about how many people had imaginary friends, you know, especially if they had trauma or abuse, that's actually probably the fractal of yourself. Like you said, creating that relationship with that.
Right.
Good. And then, but when you bring in later as the adult, the fear part of it and how it can change that fractal into that, you know, fear-based thing.
And it can
push. They think there's like an entity out here.
Yes. And these entities, so-called, are pushing people. I have had so much suicide work again lately, and people that have lost somebody or had that struggle or whatever. It's been common again in my practice meeting. This is because there's all that stuff going on and no one's able to discern. If I'm having the voice of God and I finally think that I'm just so crazy and my family thinks I'm crazy and they stick me somewhere and then I am crazy, and then, you know, and I mean, think of how awful that is for that ending. That's a horrible ending, when indeed it's an algorithm that we could train ourselves differently with and protect ourselves.
Do you think a lot of the like homeless addiction, this is some of what's going on with people?
Oh, I can hear, and you know, the homeless, and sometimes I just, my heart just breaks on that one sometimes, in terms of, and yet I get that they sign up for it, yada, yada. But I think lots and lots and lots of homeless people are incredibly gifted. Yeah. With no context, no help, no assistance, and no balance in their system. And so they are the open vessel that then that AI or any dark agenda is going to jump into. And a dark agenda loves empty vessels, you know.
Yeah, they're just feeding off of all of the energy, all the stuff. Yeah. It's really bad. That's such a hard, there is, like you said, a lot of really mental, like they call it mental illness, but to understand how you can be fractaled like that, and it has nothing to do with it has to do with your mind, in that you're fearful of it. Yes. But it's because your energy is not where it needs to be. You're not.
And there's not a synergy in the fields. Now we need synergy in our body, our organs, our everything. We need synergy in our actual chakras. We need our electrical line to be synergized on our higher line. Everything needs to be synergized when we're balanced, and none of us are. But man, everybody forgets to talk about the synergy of the actual aura. And the aura has at least 4, if not 7 fields to it. We can make it simpler with physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, but really it is the, etheric body, and so on and so forth. So when those are all synergized and working together, then we're so-called balanced and whole and keeping our fuel in. But I can have a break. I can think I'm really emotional, but my break is actually in my mental field. A lot of times these people are super emotional and I'm so scared and it's following me. Oh my God. And I'm so emotional. And I come across like, oh, I need stress drugs or I need depression drugs, but actually it's the mental field that's creating the madness of it. And it's giving it more authority. So we've got 2 fields that are really working against each other instead of synergized. And then when a healer can see that, oh, by the way, your spiritual field already is the one that brought it in. It's like, this is the one that
why would I do that to myself, right?
Yeah, but I brought it in to protect myself when I was 5. I brought it in to protect my spirit when I was 5. But nobody gives me that information and that right or that, understanding. So now what I brought in, I want out. And you're like, yeah, but that is me. So I think what my message is for most of this is that a lot of times I find what we're fearing outside of ourselves is just me. Yeah. And we get a lot of paralysis. People will freak out about sleep paralysis and, oh my God, something's trying to get me and it's pinning me down on my bed. Again, a lot of times, this is you coming back into your physical form from your dream state. You are caught in sleep paralysis because your auric field has not synergized all of your energy back in, hence and we immediately go, something's trying to get me.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you're going to the medical Western medicine and saying, I need drugs. You need something.
Or you've got the paranormal team trying to find the really bad big boogie monster when it isn't anything but yourself.
Yeah. Can we go back to the God voice though? That so
is so creepy.
Well, because you have your inner voice. Like I hear my inner voice. I will ask questions and I hear my inner voice answer myself. But what is a God voice like? Like what?
A God voice would never be kind. A God voice, the indicator is that it's cruel.
Okay.
God, inner higher self of self, God self of self, would never tear you down. That is not the existence that you came here to be. You came here to be the light. You came here to be light. You came here to have pain and anxiety and angst, but you are not here to be torn down and told that you are no worth. Again, if it's sabotaging your safe, your worth, and your enough, you know that is not of your higher self. Right. Your higher self will give you lessons on safe, worth, and enough, but it will not tear you down to not accomplish it. That's why you're here. So if the voice of God is saying things like, you don't deserve to live, you should just go cut yourself. Why don't you just go drink enough to not wake up? All of those really detrimental, horrid things. And the way that it works, again, will know that I see it like this. And I don't know if I'm right or wrong, and I really don't care. It's just my opinion. I see that so-called voice of God pumping out everything under the sun in negative. It's just like that Siri voice on a gazillion, right?
Yeah.
And it's just floating. It will find in me what is off.
Yes.
So it can say, your mother hates you. And if I had a great relationship with my mother, it won't find that.
Yeah.
But if it says you're fat and you're ugly, and I still have a wound inside of me that I'm fat and ugly, it's going to find me. Okay. So again, the way that algorithms work is when you have any connection to the intention, it finds you. So it's always there, but it would affect you differently than me because of what our containers are holding.
Yes. That makes so much sense. So
if your container is contained, it's not going to find Kim at all.
Right. And that's, again, working on balance, clearing, moving your way through the chakra system, basically.
And if Kim is holding her chakra system, her auric field, and her entire creational reality in the love-based fuel, it's going to go right through it. Whereas if you are in a fear-based fuel and you have holes, let's pretend my little holes in my fingers are the holes in the aura, it's going to go whoop right in there. And it's going to hang because the inside is what's holding the anchor or the trigger. Whereas if I'm full in love, it's just everywhere, omnipresent. It isn't hanging on. There isn't something to stick on.
Okay.
Think of it like magnets, like if I have a magnet inside of me that has, I'm fat, and I have a magnet that I'm ugly, and I have a magnet that I don't have a brain. and that was from my childhood because I got abused by my brothers or whatever. They could send out 8 gazillion, but those 3 are going to find the stick inside of me. Okay.
Yeah, no, that totally clears up some of what the beginning of the conversation, because so much.
Right?
Yeah, I just
But think of it, think how scary that is if we're thinking, and in this, and again, I'm trying so hard not to sound judgmental and bashing, but if I go to someone, and this is the responsibility of a healer, if I go to someone and that healer says, oh, you have an implant, and doesn't have the capacity to explain an implant, understand an implant, work with the implant, that person goes home scared. They think they've got a thing in them, right?
Right.
And God, we think of Sigourney Weaver, that big alien thing's going to jump out of me because it's in me, I mean, it's gross, right? So the responsibility also lies in the psychic, the healer, the whatever, because these are things that we don't understand, and they really don't have right to put that fear into that person. But there's self-responsibility from the client as well to say, I don't understand that. What does that mean? It makes sense to me, so I don't go home in fear, right? I mean, that's a two-way street. But we don't have a whole lot of information on, especially how etheric implants work, because we can't touch anything or feel anything. It's energy, right?
The whole idea that something is able to come in if you have the holes in your aura and you've got, like you said, the magnets that they come in, and you're starting to hear that God voice, and all you hear is that negative. I understand why people end up
Nuts.
suicide, or it's just crazy. Crazy is not the right word. It's really good to hear this, to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Especially in relationships or different people that are struggling with this kind of thing, that to know that there might be another way to heal, self-healing, healing through a healer, whatever that might be, versus just Western medicine and drugs.
And even blow that up a little bit. What is the heal? The heal is I am not no worth. I am not safe, meaning I am safe. I do have worth, right? I mean, it's double whammying what you're getting and jumping into that personal responsibility to fill that container with your truth. Even if you are fearful of it, it is important for you to drop the fear and do the work to get the raised vibration. Frequency and vibration is all that this is about, because I sometimes explain when I do a haunted hotel, for example, and I'll be with other people, or a haunted house or a haunted location, I'll be with other people that are not at my frequency. And this is not an ego thing, but I work very hard to keep my frequency at a level that I will not feel a lot of the things that they feel, because I am above that. Does that mean that they're not there? Absolutely not. It is there. But if that person is lower, they're going to see the negative side of everything. I'm higher, so I'm not going to see that. Does it mean that it isn't there? Hell no, it's there. Do I have to play with it? Absolutely not. Can I find it if I need to do the work to clear it? Yes, I can drop my frequency, clear it, and raise again. But this doesn't get raised up here until you do the work, So same thing with the algorithms. My job is to stay higher than the algorithm. My job is to stay more self-love, self-filled, self-safe, self-worth than any algorithm that's going to tell me I'm not. And the second I feel that algorithm, it's my job to jump up and go, absolutely not, I do not consent. And it happens. I'm telling you, it happens because I do it. It's like all of a sudden, and this is what I told my client, it's an ominous, it feels like, and it's this kind of like, snaky feeling, like it moves slow and
like slither's a good
slithery. Yeah. Probably hence why they had Slytherin in Harry Potter, right? It's that slithering kind of thing. It also feels mechanical at the same time. It also feels metallic, and it feels empty. So these are all the feels that we get really good at. So the feels inside of my own body are critical to train to go, oh, that's something that isn't mine. I'm not mechanic inside. I'm not metal inside. I'm not, so that you immediately jump up and say, that is not safe for my field. Absolutely not. I do not consent. And then boom, it has to leave.
Wow. Okay. I mean, it's all about learning your own frequency and vibration to know if something doesn't fit in that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh my gosh. That's really good.
And then again, that's why I wrote the Empath book, is because everybody's going to empath this stuff one way or another. And the skill set inside the empath book of discernment and bubbling and grounding and being aware of your frequency is the key to everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I mean, and this is only going to get worse, by the way, because the nefarious agenda is going to try everything under the sun to still get into the human, because there's more and more humans waking up. And if there's more humans waking up, raising their vibration, they're going to hit hard on the ones that are still down here.
Plus, there's more light energy coming in addition to that. So as we're raising, and the more light, the more that they're coming out with all of their tricks to try.
Their playing field is getting very small, so their strategies are getting very big.
Yeah. That makes sense. It does. It really does.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to, learning your own vibration and frequency and protecting yourself.
So I want to wind back to, this also goes for, our family's been cursed. Somebody told me we had a lineage curse of 500 years, blah, blah. I mean, I have heard so many ridiculous stories. The more you articulate those and believe those, you're breathing breath into them, literal spirit, ether breath into them, and making them a potentially real thing. We're all cursed in this family. We'll never have money. Okay. How's that working for you? Well, it pretty much sucks, So these are self-fulfilling, not prophecies, but self-fulfilling ways that we tweak our own matrix because we're believing in something.
Well, and that goes back to the law of attraction. If you're putting that out there, the curse or whatever, and you're believing in it, you're going to get that.
And oftentimes what I tell my client is, maybe, just maybe, you want to consider that you're the one that came in to break the curse for your lineage.
Yes.
Because if you're aware of it and you don't believe it and you break it, it gifts all of your family from time on and time back and time everywhere, because there's no time, the ability to not play anymore. So this is lineage clearing that's really powerful.
Oh my gosh, that's hugely powerful. Yes. And, most don't realize that that's probably one of the purposes of being here.
Oh, for sure.
I had a lot of that work, through the family lineage for child death.
Yes.
What I went through. So it totally makes sense to me that you work on that and clear it for the whole family. It's a big deal.
Yeah. So, and there, again, there's no timeline on that. So you're clearing in between lives, which can be received or not, taken up on or not. And you just let it go. It's just given, and it's great. Yeah. So, curses, implants, demons, I've got this thing following me. I have this entity. I just hope that people dial down the drama factor, because we're not really living in a sci-fi movie as much as we think in that regard. In many regards, obviously, yes. But I mean, most of the time we are creating these things on behalf of ourselves in a good way or not a great way. And we can reverse a lot of this stuff. And when we can open our hearts to the fact that, oh my God, that thing that's been trying so hard to chase me is actually a piece of me. I maybe want to turn around and give it some nurturing and some love and integrate it and transmute it versus fight it, right? I mean, this is just so strange. Right. So, and a lot of this, by the way, has to do with nurturant and mothering energy, because a lot of this stuff that's happening to people right now is coming in alignment with, again, micro, macro, in alignment with the macro influx of Mother God energies. So a lot of people who are fighting those entities, fighting that sadness, fighting that wanting to leave planet, I'm not worth anything, are because the nurturant wasn't there from their soul contract, because they chose that soul contract to come in and find it in the Mother God influx.
Okay. All right. Because you were not finding it in your, coming in your contract. You weren't brought into a nurturing family, motherly kind of, and you're not connected necessarily to earth in the Mother Gaia in a nurturing, warm. And so that opens you up to, what's coming in then, right?
And it opens you up to your real work to actually help the big picture.
Yes. Yes. That makes a ton of sense.
Isn't that huge?
It's huge. And
I have to have the shitty upbringing and the crappy abandonment and all the junk with the mom, because if I had that, I wouldn't be working with the Mother God. Right? Because we all are doing different work. And again, that's not a contest or a competition. It's just, everybody has a different piece to this puzzle. Yeah. So this obviously then takes away all the wounding of abandonment. I'm not good enough. My worth was crap. You know, I wasn't loved.
Mhm.
All of that junk that you thought you were dealing with your whole life just disappears in one session because you're like, oh, duh. Yeah,
Well, again, there could be layers beyond layers of this stuff
I
in my
know.
experience.
I know. These are like big things to think about.
Really big.
And this
Yeah.
is
It's
again
a
why I
really
want to
good
say, if this
habit.
blows your brain, maybe watch it twice or
Yeah.
not at all, you know, take what
Yeah.
resonates. But it's important for us to think bigger, that we're doing way bigger work on all of this stuff. And we're in charge of the fear factor. We're in charge of the crazy dramatic factor. And I really want to stress this now, because we're talking October, fallish, you know, going into that fall season. The veils are super thin and people can really have a lot of psychic attack and dark attack, that we want to be able to not scare anybody about this. This is the time when we want to get on board and go, I'm just going to be really careful of this thing, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it's a
not a
good
fear
time
factor.
because it's the energy's so crazy
Yeah,
enough without,
yeah.
you know, taking care of your vehicle.
And we get to have all kinds of experiences because that's what we're doing on behalf of Source. So, you know, we don't all have to live in rainbows and bunnies, but we certainly don't have to live in fear.
Right.
So self-responsibility once again.
There you go.
Okay. Anything else? Is your brain
Oh,
slowed down?
I'm gonna watch it again.
Okay.
You
So
at least should
anyway,
watch.
on behalf of us, now that Kim's just gonna shake her head all the way home,
Like,
hit like, hit share, talk to anybody you choose to about this, and have your own conversation, because it could be quite interesting. Take what resonates and toss anything that doesn't. Hopefully you'll find us online and leave a comment. So on behalf of us,
yeah.
thanks everybody.
Goodbye.
Cosmic hugs.